The wrecking yard is gonna make the kids alright. We're having all the fun until the day is done. The wrecking yard is gonna make the kids alright. We're having all the fun until the day is done. You won't know what hit you till the cows come in the yard. Come on down to the wrecking yard. The wrecking yard is gonna make the kids alright. We're having all the fun until the day is done. The wrecking yard is gonna make the kids alright. We're having all the fun until the day is done. You won't know what hit you till the cows come in the yard. Come on down to the wrecking yard.
Hi, welcome to the Wrecking Yard. This is my third episode from my recent podcast trip. Today I'll be talking with Dave Stuckey. He was half of one of my favorite bands of all time, the Dave and Deke Combo, who when I saw them in Chicago way back in the 90s sometime, I'm bad with dates, was honestly one of the best shows I've ever seen. They were a short-lived combo as a working band, although since they've broken apart, they've done many reunion shows, so maybe they're not an ongoing concern, but they're a concern that pops up every once in a while. And I've seen several of those shows as well, and they were awesome. And one of them even had an outhouse on stage, which I think we discuss in this podcast. This was one of my favorite podcasts. I love talking to people about music, especially people who are, in my age range, who had maybe similar experiences, and also people who grew up in the Midwest. Dave's from Kansas City. And we talk about, all sorts of things, including the Dave and Deke Combo and all the various music that he's been making since then, which I can tell you he's put out some really beautiful records. And you should buy them. You should buy them all. So here's my talk with Dave Stuckey.
We were there. So we were there at the same time.
Yeah.
I'll be damned.
Yeah. Now you're from Kansas City, right?
Uh-huh.
So you're more than familiar with Arthur Bryant's.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Gates.
Oh yeah.
That's like the Yankees and it's like the Yankees and Mets.
Right.
But everybody, you just cast your side. It's more like the North and the South in the Civil War.
Well, Well, here's the thing. People say you got to pick between cats and dogs, Beatles and Stones, whatever.
Yeah.
No, I like them both.
You don't have to. I know.
I like them both.
I like Gates too. I sort of probably had more Arthur Bryant's growing up, but I like Gates too.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I try to make. There's a lot of places. Good places to eat in Kansas City.
Oh, there it is. Oh, we also went to Stroud's on the way.
Oh, Stroud's.
Because he had never had their chicken before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Stroud's is great, man. Yeah, it was fun. It was the first time I'd ever done anything with my younger daughter, just the two of us.
I thought that was cool.
And I thought I really needed to get back and see my folks because it had been a while.
Well, I figured, yeah.
So we took.
Yeah, we haven't been out of the house for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's our first time away from.
No kidding.
Yeah.
It's weird, and we took the train out because I'd never done that.
That's fun too.
It's
except
fun.
for you want to sleep. If you want to sleep, it's not good.
Yeah, we even bought one of those sleeperettes they call them, which are really like a little closet with a bunk and a bottom.
Right.
And you can sit during the day, and then she folds them down. And first of all, they were insanely expensive. That one little
that's why we
crazy
never did it.
expensive. Yeah. And secondly, kind of hard to sleep on a train for me. I mean, because you get to those points where the tracks maybe aren't completely well maintained.
Mm-hmm.
You're jostling around, and it was 2 nights. You do 2 nights in a day.
Yeah.
And it maybe got 5 hours. All that time.
If you're lucky.
If we're lucky.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, we just got to Kansas City,
yeah.
and my daughter said, I don't think I want to go back because we had a round trip. I said, you know what? I agree.
Oh, so you flew back?
So we flew back.
Wow.
Trains are great for day trips.
Mm-hmm.
They're fantastic for day trips, and maybe they're better back east. But around here it was, go to Santa Barbara, San Diego, whatever, fun. That's fun.
Right.
But anytime you're in for the long haul, it's a little no Wi-Fi.
We did the trip from California to Indianapolis a couple of times.
On the train?
Yes.
Oh.
And you're right. The lack of Wi-Fi was infuriating
Oh.
for me because I just thought, look, it's a train. It's 2011.
Right.
Come on.
Right.
But the other thing, and he said it too, if you don't have one of those sleeper things,
Yeah.
you're not sleeping at all.
I'll
Because
bet.
the chairs don't lean back to any comfortable position that you could actually sleep in.
I wondered about that.
And if you go in like the sort of like community car thing with their seats and tables and
Yeah.
stuff, they have them fixed in a way that you cannot lay down straight.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and so getting sleep it's almost impossible.
Coach has got to be worse. I mean,
Yeah.
the sleeperette. Maybe if you could afford one of those rooms. Well, what are they? $2,000 or something? 'Cause,
Probably.
maybe that would be okay. But still, the ride is not. And they blow the whistle all night,
Yes.
right? Because they're trying to pick up speed,
Right.
trying to make up time. But it was an hour and a half late leaving Union Station. It was 3 hours late arriving in Kansas City Union Station. So I'm a big fan of trains, but something's got to.
The romance of the rails.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's nothing like
I'm
it.
with it too. I thought taking a train trip would be great. And other than the sleep part, I did have a fun time.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was going to be quite that slow, though.
Yeah.
The first time I went, I was like, 2.5 days?
Yeah.
I could drive there in that
Yeah.
time. So,
And stops, so many stops.
yeah. But it was the no Wi-Fi that freaked me out because I just
ridiculous.
assumed I could watch my Netflix on the train.
Of course.
Yeah, no.
I mean, buses have Wi-Fi. Like why can't
Uber has Wi-Fi.
Uber has Wi-Fi? Yeah,
Yes.
right.
Yeah, so
It's I don't get that at all, and I'm like you. I didn't even check it beforehand. I thought, well, yeah, of course, because I've been on day trips
Sure.
that have it
uh-huh.
up and down the coast. I don't know if it was broken. I don't know if they did, but the first thing she said was, "Okay, there's no Wi-Fi on this train."
No, it's specific. They have trains that specifically say on the schedule beforehand there's no Wi-Fi on this train, and there are trains with Wi-Fi. So that's what I don't understand is I'm sure it's just a box they could plug in. Why don't you have it on all
Of course.
I have Wi-Fi in my car. I mean, I just plug a thing
Oh,
into
yeah.
the thing and I'm good.
It's
you know.
like, it's like water. It's like a public utility.
Yeah.
It's like electricity.
So you had a good time?
We did have a good time.
That's good. It was kind of muggy for us, but that's fine. We're from Indiana. We're used to it.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't miss that for sure. And I hadn't been back in the summertime in years and years.
Now,
Usually it's Christmas.
Had your daughter been there before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Christmas time.
Yeah, sure.
So, but what is amazing I forget about the Midwest to go back because it was so green, man. It was so green, which is great.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then the one thing I wanted to do mostly was just take her around to the grandparents and all that. I didn't even get a chance to get together with any of my buddies, but one thing I did do is my dad and I went out and looked. I wanted to find Casey Bill Weldon's grave, which is in Kansas City, and it was unmarked for 40 years. And then a Blue Society or something found it. They dedicated a thing, headstone. And what I didn't realize when I got there is also where Charlie Parker's buried.
Oh, really?
So that was a cool. There was a little looking for the Casey Bill because it's just this little black cemetery.
That's two birds with one headstone.
That's right. That's right. But Charlie's is very easy to find because it's real big. It's the biggest one in the thing. So yeah. So that it was fun. We had a good time.
Now, growing up in Kansas City, did you grow up in a musical household? Was there a lot of music in the house?
I mean, to an extent, not necessarily in the house, but my dad was in a big band when he was in college.
Really?
Local.
What did he play?
He played reeds.
Wow.
Mostly sax.
Uh-huh.
And the funny thing is, when you grow up in Kansas City, if you keep your ears open, you hear about music because people just talk about it.
Right.
So I did grow up hearing a lot about the history of it and the good ghosts, and you hear that, Fats Waller died in the train station there, and Count Basie and Joe Turner singing at the bar from behind the bar. You hear about all that stuff if you're paying attention at all.
Right.
So I kind of grew up with that interest just sort of baked in.
Really, yeah. Okay, so when you started listening to music, or I guess when you started paying attention to it, was there any certain type that you were attracted to first?
Well, it's funny because, I grew up, junior high, in the beginning of high school, like every kid, I was just in a rock band. You know, I met some guys,
Right.
and we played in the driveway, and but then about through my interest in comics, really,
Mhm.
underground comics, I was an R. Crumb fan.
Right.
So he's always writing about blues and old jazz. There was like two things. There was that I was reading about that stuff. Like, what is this? This sounds crazy. And seeing Leon Redbone on Saturday Night Live. You know,
I remember that like it was yesterday.
Like it was yesterday.
So I didn't understand it.
I thought-
I was going, what?
I thought this is crazy and mysterious, and these tunes are super melodic, and it just blew my mind. So that was what, probably 76,
Yeah, right around there.
75.
I probably thought it was Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, because he looks like he's wearing a costume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you remember when Devo was on Saturday Night Live the first
Sure.
time? The next Monday at school, I overheard two guys talking about it because it was all the talk.
Oh, yeah.
And the guys were going, I couldn't figure out which one was John Belushi and which one was Dan Aykroyd. They thought it was a joke band.
Yeah.
And I finally told them, I said, guys, like I was really into music. I mean, so much so that I would like scour the back of Trouser Press and order all those little 45s in the ads, you know?
Sure.
And I ordered the first Devo single from them, and it came in a really nice, like, fold-out sleeve. It's probably valuable now. I don't have it. But it was a real nice fold-out sleeve. And they sent me a letter, or not a letter, but a note. It was like, thank you very much for buying our record.
Wow.
And this would happen all the time. I mean, because most of these records were being sent from probably the guitar player's house or something.
Oh, sure,
you know?
sure.
And a lot of them would come with a little note. They'd just say, hey, thanks for buying our record. Made me feel good. I was getting records that nobody else had.
Yeah,
You know. So I guess you were, I assume, off to the races as far as record collecting is concerned.
Yeah, I think, yes, basically. I had gone to, there was a bookstore in Overland Park, a used bookstore, that had, about this time I was getting interested in this stuff and kind of trying to figure out what it was.
Sure.
They had stacks and stacks of 78s. And I started looking through them because I'm thinking about the Crumb stuff. And I just bought like two that I thought had really good titles, And I turned out to like them. One of them was a Jelly Roll Morton Hot Pepper Stomp, and another one was by the original Dixieland Jazz Band. It's their first record. It's called, one side's called Livery Stable Blues, and the other side is called Dixieland One Step. Now I can't remember because I like the other side better. Turns out that's the first released jazz record.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't.
It was a white band, which is very weird.
Okay.
But yeah, they were the first, like just by happenstance.
Recently, there was an episode of Radio Lab on Harry Pace. Are you familiar with Harry Pace?
Yeah, I didn't hear the episode though.
It was a 4-parter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was all about how he started Black Swan.
Yeah.
And then after that seized up and died,
Yeah.
he became a lawyer in Chicago, and he started fighting all the community charters that were making it so that a landlord could not sell or rent to a black family.
Yeah.
So he started going after those, and he started winning cases, and then he died. What happened was, when he died, his family took all of his stuff and like burned it and threw it away because he was light skinned. And when he was passing, and the family didn't want anyone to know any differently.
Right.
So this Radio Lab starts with just this past year, this family who had a portrait of their grandfather on the wall. I guess the dad called the whole family and says, family meeting, get here now. So I guess they all, they were thinking like, oh shit, Dad, they're going to get divorced or someone's got cancer or, something.
Yeah.
And they get there and they go, that picture there? They goes, yeah, Uncle Harry, whatever. He was black. They thought that they were Italian. They had been told they were Italian this whole time. And what happened is somebody, either from Radio Lab or was writing an article, called them and said, hey, we need some information on Harry Pace. And they're like, well, we don't know anything. All they had was just that photo.
Yeah.
But his history just completely vanished.
Yeah.
Just like gone.
Yeah.
The funny thing is when I lived here, I used to do packing and shipping for this guy named Bill Doggett. I don't know if you've met him or not here in town.
No.
He is the preeminent scholar on a form of music that I cannot say. Okay. When I was doing packing and shipping for him, he said, here, I got some sheet music. Can you pack these up? And I looked down. I'm sure you've probably seen these.
Yeah.
Around the minstrelsy era.
Oh yeah.
I mean, each one was worse than the next one, and I'm like going, and I knew that stuff existed, or I had a vague notion that stuff existed.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the sort of thing I look up on the internet. You know,
Right.
I'd like to see some internet racist or sheet music. I mean, it just wasn't anything I thought of.
Yeah.
And then he showed me, you know, like some records that he had, and I realized at that point that I didn't know as much as I thought I knew.
Uh-huh.
And I have points like that through my life where I'll meet somebody and they'll say, well, blah, 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 and I'll say, I knew none of that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's for me, that's the fun part about music is like, for instance, I used to hate reggae. And I mean, I detested it. I was just like, it all sounds the same, bunch of dope smoking idiots. I don't want anything to do with this shit. Finally, I got to be in my mid-20s and I'm like, well, you know, maybe that's an immature attitude. Maybe I should ask someone. I knew a guy who was really into reggae, and I said, here's a couple of cassettes.
Oh yeah.
Make me like reggae.
Enlighten me. Yeah.
Yeah. And he did. All he did was dub off "This Is Reggae Music," the compilation. He didn't
Oh, yeah.
put any effort into it. He just did it. And it was great.
And it
I
was
loved
great.
it. I loved every bit of it. You know.
Yeah.
And the same thing sort of happened with country. My family hated country music when I grew up. I mean, my dad ignored it, and my mom made fun of it. Whenever we get those Columbia House ads,
Yeah.
she'd go, "Ha, look, Narvel Phelps," and she'd just laugh and laugh and laugh.
Right.
So in my house, no country at all, except I had 2 Johnny Horton records that I was mostly interested in because they were history records.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Homer and Jethro records because
Yeah.
everyone likes Homer and
Yes,
Jethro.
of course.
So they should.
Yeah.
But that was it. As far as country was concerned, that was it.
Yeah.
And my mom liked Elvis, but she wasn't a huge Elvis fan, so we had a little bit of that around the house. So
Yeah.
I also kind of grew up thinking that Elvis was, you know, just that fat guy that
Yeah.
my mom
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
likes, you
Yeah.
know. Although I will tell you this, I once overheard my mom on the phone when Burning Love was a big hit.
Yeah.
I heard my mom on the phone go, "Have you heard that new Elvis record? It makes me wet."
She did not.
Yes, she did.
Oh my God.
And I'm going like, what? It makes you sweat?
What does that
What?
mean?
And she was like, go in your room.
That's wow.
Yeah.
That is great.
Well, I grew up in a weird house, so this goes on. But anyway, but I did grow up in a musical house. My
Yeah.
mom,
Okay.
she didn't have the best taste ever, but you know, she had some like, you know, like Cat Stevens and Neil Diamond and that sort of stuff. And
Oh, yeah.
and when we were a little bit younger, she had like Herman's Hermits, Peter and Gordon, some
Yeah.
Beatle records, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of grew up with it around me all the time.
Yeah.
But as far as like different genres were concerned, I mean, I had to actually seek people out that
True.
knew something, and I'd say, okay, can you enlighten me on this?
Yeah. My folks, Dad listened. He was a big Stan Kenton fan.
Uh-huh.
We listened to a lot of that. He was a big Sinatra fan. He took me to see Stan Kenton in Excelsior Springs, Missouri, in a high school gym in the 70s, and that was the first time I got to see a big band play, and it was the first time I ever got to see a band play with the Stan Kenton, like later on got to be known for like these extreme dynamics,
Right.
like screaming and then down to super low, and then, you know, so when it was wild. And I liked rock and roll at the time, but I thought, this is amazing. So, you know, I kind of learned that way. My mom liked some music. My grandmother, we used to, they owned a farm out north of Kansas City. And we were there almost every weekend. Because my dad, even though he was a lawyer, he would still help out at the farm on the weekends. And I'd go out, and my grandmother would take me around, and she had this Cadillac. And we would come down. They were off the interstate. It was quite a drive back to their house. And so what she would often do, she liked Mantovani and all that kind of stuff. She loved Dean Martin. And what we would do, what she loved to do, was we'd get to a certain point down the road where the cows were grazing, and she'd stop on the other side of the fence with the car. She'd roll down the window, and she'd turn up this Dean Martin 8-track that she had that I still remember to this day. And the cows would all come over just to listen to the thing. They'd all come right to the fence. And I just thought, wow, as a kid, is that the greatest thing you could ever have?
That's kind of magical, actually.
It's magical.
Yeah.
And she'd love to do that. She'd say, watch this. And she'd turn it up, and you know, Dean singing, you know, I'm going back to Houston, Houston, you know. And they'd all come, and they'd just stand at the fence and listen. So, I had music in my life in a lot of ways. And I loved when I got to be about 14, 15, I was taking guitar lessons already, but I became enamored with the 5-string banjo, probably mostly because of the Beverly Hillbillies, Brian Scruggs being guests. And so I got the Earl Scruggs Method book, and I got a 5-string banjo. So for a while I was taking like rock and roll guitar and 5-string, which I had no one to play it with. bluegrass. I
Right.
had no friends in the suburbs that cared anything about that, but I did do that for a while, and it still comes back to me. But so yeah, I was interested in it pretty early on. I'd say as early as I can remember.
Right. Do you remember the first record you actually bought?
The first record I owned was the Archies, Sugar Sugar, because it was a cardboard record on a Sugar Crisp.
Yeah, we got all
Right?
that.
Remember those?
Oh, yeah.
And you'd wreck the box cutting out that record.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you'd accidentally cut the bag inside, or half the record, or half the cereal would come off on the floor.
Yeah, your mom get mad at you. The first record I actually purchased, I think, with my own money,
Right.
was Magic Carpet Ride by
Wow,
Steppenwolf.
that's respectable. Mine, I had two. Candyman by Sammy Davis Jr.
Sammy Davis Jr.
and Nice to Be With You by Gallery.
I remember that.
Yeah, those are my first two. But my first album, that I didn't buy it, but somebody gave it to me. Ironically, I think it might have been his first album. It was his K-Tel record called Believe in Music. Remember that?
Oh.
And I had like 10 of them because every one of them was warped, and I had to keep taking it back, keep taking it back, keep taking it back. And finally, they were like, maybe you shouldn't get this record.
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, I'll keep the warped one.
Those
and so,
cheap, man,
oh, they were
pressings
horrible. I mean, 20 songs on a record. I mean, you're not going to get much dynamic range out of that. And do you remember the Dynaflex records?
Oh, yeah.
You could take them and take the ends and bend them so they touch, and then let go and go. Yeah, all of my Home and Jethro albums were on Dynaflex.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. And yeah, it's and it was fun to buy records back then, and part of the thing we talk about the root stuff that I became interested in.
Right.
When I was about 15 or 16, my stepdad's cousin, came over a lot, and he was a lot older than me. He gave me, he loved blues, and he gave me a Mississippi Fred McDowell record, which I still have, called "I Do Not Play No Rock and Roll," and it's just great. And for the first guy to be exposed to blues wise, he's pretty crazy.
Right.
Like with his form and how he plays, it's pretty wild. So I was entranced by that. Then he gave me the Howlin' Wolf, the London sessions, with.
That's a great one.
Oh boy! And so I got hooked on that before I really even knew what to do with it.
Sure.
So and he took me to a funny thing. He took me to one of my very first concerts. Might have been my first concert at Memorial Hall in Kansas City, and the bill was Fleetwood Mac, Little Feat, and Triumphirat, which was a German power trio, whatever.
I remember them.
Little Feat was fantastic.
I can imagine.
They were great.
That live album's one of the great live albums of all time.
So very true.
Yes.
But then he thought he was taking me to see the Peter Green Fleetwood Mac, but it was the Bob Welch edition.
There's a little difference.
And I just remember him just watching the concert and thinking, this isn't anything like I thought it would be. I don't know. It's all pretty good to me. It's all fun to me.
Well, the Fleetwood Mac people seem to be like the early Fleetwood Mac people or the late Fleetwood Mac people, but the middle period has a very small sliver of fans.
Very small.
Yes. I saw Bob Welch open up for Styx at the Indiana State Fair.
Oh,
and everybody was just like,
yeah,
it was just horrible.
He was very mellow.
Yeah. So you reminded me of a story a minute ago. Before I forget it, when I used to live at this apartment complex near a Target, I used to go there all the time. And you remember the song "The Streak"? Of course you do, right?
Yeah, of course. Ray Stevens, yeah.
Yes. So I go in there one day, and they have this big table in the front by the return counter, and they've got a turntable on there, and the table is filled with like hundreds of copies of "The Streak." Okay, they're just like stacked all around this turntable. Somebody has put the record on it, lifted up the what do you call it? Not the tone arm, but the thing that holds the records down, so that it will repeat.
The spindle. Oh yeah.
And they had that song on repeat the whole day that the store was open. And I sat down once and I was like, okay, that's 3 minutes times, an hour times, take away lunch, blah, blah, blah. And I finally figured out that like the people working the front counter must have heard "The Streak" like 200 times a day.
A day.
Yes. And I'm telling you, that would have made me kill myself.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, even if it was a song I liked, I would have like, oh, God, no, not again. But it was funny. You go in there and you go, hey, put some clothes on, asshole. The people are like going, oh, God, here, let me ring up your socks.
Try to tune it out.
Yeah.
Well, we had a streaker at my junior high. when,
Oh, really?
when that all was going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember having any at our school, but I'm sure when they were having those clubs that they had, those secret clubs.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody had to do something.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
So back when you were listening to rock, what were you listening to?
Oh, at the time, probably what everybody was listening to. Like, I remember, like, one of the first ones I really remember liking because he just seemed so wild and kind of funny at the same time was Alice Cooper.
For sure.
Like Killer and $1 Billion Babies. I just loved that stuff.
$1 Billion Babies was huge.
Yeah.
You know,
It was.
It was like
School's
that.
Out and all that, yeah.
It was like that Herb Albert and Tijuana Brass
Yeah.
album. If you bought a house in the '70s, it came with a copy of $1 Billion Babies. You know?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So.
Yeah. So it was that kind of stuff. Of course, the earliest stuff I remember was, Kansas City. WHB was one of the very first top 40 stations, Todd Stores. And it was when, you remember when top 40 was good. When you could just hear anything. Tony Joe White or Dionne Warwick or...
It didn't have to be one genre. They
Not at all.
They throw it in there.
They threw it all in.
Yeah, theme from a summer place.
Yeah, exactly.
And then here's Satisfaction.
Right.
So,
which was so great to grow up with as a
yeah,
kid.
I was fine with it.
Oh, I had the proverbial transistor radio that I had in my bed
Right.
and tuned it in, and I hated Sunday nights because they did community programming on WHB.
Yeah.
They had real funny thing. This is just a few years ago. There's a guy that lives here in town who I would see at gigs all the time, and I knew him. I'd never spoken much to him, although I knew he was from Kansas City, and we'd talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then a group of us went to see some on the west side, and we got together for dinner ahead of time, and then we were just talking, and this guy Rick says, gosh, when I was a kid, my dad was a DJ, so I heard a lot of good records. I said, he was? Yeah. What station was he on? WHB. I said, oh my God, I love WHB. Who is your dad? Because they don't have the same name.
Uh-huh.
He said, my dad was Phil J. I said, and I really just fell out.
Right.
He was my favorite disc jockey
Uh-huh.
in Kansas City for years.
Yep.
I said, and I think I kind of shocked him. I said, you are not telling me your dad is Phil J. It's like hearing your dad was Elvis,
Oh, yeah.
He meant everything to me. So those DJs and personalities, like, I never missed a show. And it was a lot, especially with a guy like that, those DJs they were kind of hip, or it seemed like it at the time, and they make a lot of references that I didn't even get, about, references to getting drunk in obtuse ways and swinging and
Or maybe my
whatever.
mom's reference.
That is too much, man. That is really crazy.
Yeah, I was just like, going, what?
But yeah, so nothing meant more to me than Top 40 radio in the late 60s.
Sure.
So it kind of went from there.
Well, yeah, for us, my grandma lived an hour and a half away, and since my parents were fairly young, they listened to, WIFE, which was the big AM radio station in town. So every trip to grandma's, we're getting hit in the face with like the Beatles and the Stones and Yardbirds and the Kinks and all this stuff, and you'd love it because it sounded so good coming out of that little speaker.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was engineered to sound good coming out of that speaker.
Absolutely.
And it'd be an exciting trip on the way back. We'd be in the back, whatever, and having a good old time. And so I also had an uncle who every once in a while would like say, here's a stack of albums.
Oh.
And so I'm like, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, and he's give me here's having a rave up with the Yardbirds. You'll probably like this.
Yeah.
Or Country Joe and the Fish. Like the really weird shit. I finally, Lothar and the Hand People.
Yeah,
I finally figured out that what he was doing was he was giving me all the records he didn't want anymore.
Yeah.
Because he didn't like them.
Yeah.
So a lot of them weren't great. But just having them.
Yeah, when you're a kid, you're just listening to everything. What's
Exactly.
coming in. And because like my folks were just old enough that they didn't, and I don't think they were ever really hard rock and roll people anyway.
Right.
So they were listening to, you remember the format, adult contemporary.
Yeah.
And it was back when like each age group, demographic group had their own radio station, right? Like WHB was not for grown-ups. Mm-hmm. It was, even though it was run by grown-ups, it was not for grown-ups. And KUDL and some other ones, and they played a different kind of music. They played, they played Sinatra, and they played Dean, and they played, and now I kind of like I listen. I kind of collect air checks for fun, and those are kind of fun ones to listen to because that was a niche. It was a big niche, but there were the two. Never the twain shall meet.
Right.
And now it's all just because everybody grew up with rock and roll. Now then it's just all.
Yeah.
Rock and
Well,
roll.
as an aside, a friend of mine back in Indianapolis did a documentary a couple of years ago called Rock Radio Wars, and it was all about all the radio stations fighting each other in Indianapolis.
Oh, really?
It's never going to be released because he can't afford to use all the music.
Right.
When I get home, I'll send you one.
Ooh,
Because
I'd
it's
love to
really,
see
really
it.
good, and it's got tons of air checks on it.
I'd love to see that.
Okay,
I
I'll send
love
it. I'll send
air
it to you. Also, when I talked to Deke, I brought him a piece of Market Square Arena. You know Market Square Arena, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, I got a piece for you too, but I couldn't find it before I left home.
Oh, my
But I'm gonna
God.
move in a few weeks after I get home. So when I'm unpacking, I will undoubtedly run across it,
Oh.
and I'll send you a piece as well.
Oh, that would be great.
Because when they tore that thing down, they knew people were going to be trespassing and
Yeah.
stuff, so they put like big fences up and stuff, and I just waited one night and
You went down there yourself?
yeah, and I crawled under the fence and I got a big bag of these cement chunks. Well, hell, man, it's the last place Elvis played.
Yeah.
And they were just going to like take it to a dump yard
Yeah,
or
of
whatever.
course, yeah.
So I figured I got get a couple pieces,
Yeah.
And plus, that was the place where I saw my first concert, as an adult. Kiss.
Believe me, I saw Kiss too
Yeah.
in Kansas City.
Well, let me tell you, I have a great Kiss story. So I lived about 2 miles away from the nearest place I could buy a record. I go to school that day, and my friend Phil, he's got a copy of Kiss Alive. And I'm like, what is that? He goes, here, let me show you.
these guys?
And I'm looking at them, and they look pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because I'm 14 now,
Yeah.
I'm whatever.
Sure.
And then he goes, look at this. And he pulls out the book that's in it.
Yeah.
And I was like, it comes with a book? He goes, yeah, the book's in it. It comes with it. And I'm like, I'm buying that. So I go home, and I had a big white Jaws piggy bank. I took a steak knife, and I cut the bottom of it out, and I shook all the change out. I got 2 pockets full of pennies and nickels, and I walked 2 miles, and by some weird coincidence, I had the exact change down to a penny. The exact change. And I was so happy. I was like, I got that book. I got that book. And on my way home, I stopped by my dad's house because my parents were divorced. And I wanted to show my dad my record. And I go in there, and he's not home, but my stepmom is. She goes, what are you doing here? I said, I just went to buy this record. She goes, what is it? And I pull it out of the bag, and she goes, you're going to hell. I mean, that was the first thing out of her mouth. And without even dropping the needle on the record, I loved it.
Yeah.
I was like,
Sure.
yes.
That? Yeah.
They hate it. I'm in.
I mean,
Yeah. So, but my first actual real concert was the Osmonds at the
Oh,
State
really?
Fair. Yeah, but I was only like 7. So
Yeah, yeah.
It was still cool though.
that's cool.
And me and my cousin, we had binoculars, and we spent almost the entire time looking at Marie. She was like
of course.
She was like backstage watching. It was before she had joined the act, and we
Oh.
were just like, oh look, there she is. Oh, she's so pretty. But yeah, my first adult concert was Kiss. So.
Yeah.
And you must remember there was a little time between when nobody knew who the hell they were
Yeah.
and everybody knew who the hell they
Yeah.
were, that they were kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like they were dangerous.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time telling people that Kiss was sort of my doorway into punk rock.
Yeah.
It really was. And they go like, well, that's not punk rock. I go, I know it's not, but it's steps.
Well, you know what came to
Steps.
me? Like once I started, I guess college or whatever, and finding used records, and there were a couple of really good record stores in Kansas City, and the guys that would work there just were guys that worked there, but they were like gurus to me. And they tell
Yes.
me like what's cool. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure that's in every city.
Oh, yeah. I had Dirty Mike and Monty.
Right. Sounds like a DJ team in the Dirty Mike in the morning. But there was at some point, shortly after that I discovered the Dolls, which I loved, bought those albums. And then when I listened to the Dolls, I thought I could kind of see a line between the Dolls and Kiss.
Yeah.
At least when Kiss, their first couple albums. I thought, what does this remind me of? Kind of reminds me of Kiss, which is funny because then it became, I don't know what it was, but there is sort of an element of that to them, and but as a kid, you're right, like 14, 15 years old.
They were like, yeah.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, I mean,
Funny and yeah.
and if you're not in this very slim age range,
Right.
you don't understand.
That's right.
Because everybody afterwards thinks, oh, they were a kiddie band.
Yeah.
And everyone before was too snobby. They're
Yeah.
just like, oh, I'm not,
Right. No,
bring
but
me
there's a
my
little Larry
Jethro
there.
Tull.
There's a little Larry there, and that was pre-punk.
Yep.
And so when the punk came along, groups like that, you kind of thought like, okay, this makes sense. I can draw a little bit of a line.
Yeah, I was when punk happened, I was all in.
Yeah,
because
me too.
I'm kind of like I'm okay with new stuff. I like new stuff. I kind of get that from my mom. My mom will go to the store and she will buy anything that says new and improved, even if she's had it before and doesn't like it. If it says new and improved, she'll get it. And I kind of have a little bit of that in me. But my uncle, he was an artist and he was moving up to New York, and he went out there to look for an apartment. He came back and he said, I saw this band when I was out there. He says, I didn't like them so much, but I think you're going to love them. So if you ever see a record by a band called the Ramones, just go ahead and buy it. And I was like, okay. Well, this was like a good, I don't know, almost half a year to a year before that album came out.
Oh, yeah.
And so me and my friends were reading Rock Scene, and we're looking at all these pictures, the Ramones shop for a PA system. And I'm like, hey, there's those Ramones again. And I remember there was one like going grocery shopping with the Talking Heads.
Yeah.
And so anyway, one day my mom was going to get her hair done. She says, you want to go with me? And there was a record store next to where she got her hair done called Nova Records. And I said, sure, I got some money for my birthday. I'll go there. So I go there, and you know what's there. The Ramones album.
Yeah.
I'm like going, it was $4.81 with tax. It was even $5. I loved the guy that priced stuff.
Yeah, right.
So I had $5. So I was like, well, he's never steered me wrong before. So I gave the guy the $5. I come home. I put it on. The first song, I'm going, well, it's okay. Sure, okay. The next song comes on, and I'm going, oh, shit, man, I got a defective copy. It looks like they pressed the same song on each groove. And then finally I noticed a little difference in the words, and I'm going, okay, no, maybe that's not the same. So I put it back at the beginning, and I played it again. And by the time the night was over, by the time the night was over, I am jumping up on my bed like this, And
It did have that. It did have that effect of for me too. It was kind of a thing like I didn't first get it.
Yeah.
Because there was, and at the time I was looking for anything different. So I was listening to all kinds of prog rock and whatever.
Oh, sure.
And so then and I knew that this kind of wave was coming or whatever, and I was the same way, and I kind of thought, oh, okay. Like I finally got what the point of it was.
Right.
Because we just weren't old enough to I remember the guy at the record store who was, probably 18 or 20. He was like, oh, this is great, man. You got to hear this. Is it. Like, he got it right away.
Right.
And it took me a minute, but then by the second album, Leave Home, they came to Kansas City, and they did an in-store at one of the great record stores, Capers Corner, the great record store in Kansas City. And they played that night at this place called One Block West. And I went to that show too, and it was just like the weirdest, greatest thing I had ever seen.
Yeah, I know. It was just but the best thing about it is that all my friends who I didn't like very much didn't like it. So I was just like, he liked it.
Yeah.
I've known him since we were in third grade.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so he got it, and then my friend Phil got it, and so we kind of became this little triumvirate of very uncool people in school. I had a Blondie shirt on in my junior year in high school, and everybody was giving me a hard time, like, who is that? They didn't know who it was. I'm like, well, what?
See, that's how you can pick out the right people. Like, that's a good judge of character, right?
Right. Well, you might remember, that was the whole idea behind wearing a shirt. You were fishing. You were
Absolutely.
looking for someone else who would come up to you and go, cool shirt, man.
Right.
And then you go, oh, you like these guys too? You've heard of them?
Stating your thing, like,
exactly.
Oh, you know who that is? They're really great.
Wearing your
You
colors.
should hear. Yeah, wearing your colors for sure.
Yeah. I almost got beat up for a Cheap Trick t-shirt once. This guy was like going, I know that's faggy punk rock. You're going to get it. And I'm like, dude, have you seen them?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was when punk first started, it was kind of a large umbrella that everybody could fit under.
Right.
And then I think around 80 or 81, when post-punk kind of branched out, and then there was the hardcore movement where no weed, no alcohol, no sex, no nothing, just short hair and blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it became a little less fun for me then,
because
beforehand, like you said about the radio stations playing anything, punk rock could be Perubu, it could be, it could be Devo, it could be, the Ramones or the Buzzcocks or whoever. It was all over the place, and that's what made it fun. And then when everybody started compartmentalizing, it became less fun for me.
Yeah. Well, it was fun because it was you could tell that you were a part of a new scene.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, this is not King Crimson, or Yes, or whatever. This is a new deal. Some people don't get it, and that's great.
Oh yeah.
Because I love it. Probably partially because so many people didn't get it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, my mom didn't get it, and I'll tell you, he's heard this story 1,000 times, but my mom used to do an imitation of me buying records when people came over for parties.
Oh, no.
She'd go, hey, watch this. You know how my son buys records? And she'd pull one out, and she'd go, I've never heard of them. I've never heard any of these songs. They look like junkies. I'll buy it. And everyone would laugh and titter, and I'd just go like, Mom, and she's holding up my Dead Boys album.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like going, Mom, come on. But that's what it was. I mean, I was lucky that my parents really didn't care what I listened to.
Yeah.
But I know some parents, like, they would go through their kids' record collection and pull out I don't want you to have this, I don't want you to have this.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, they'd pull all the Black Flag out.
Yeah, of course.
You can't have any of these, sorry.
Right.
Yeah, but my parents were like, if Black Sabbath played on a school night, I'd go, Mom, Black Sabbath's going to be here on Wednesday. She's like, have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I saw him too.
Yeah.
In high school. Yeah.
It was fun.
It was fun.
Yeah. So, and I still sometimes will, even though I don't listen to that stuff a lot these days, I have a large sentimental attachment to things that maybe aren't great and maybe I don't like so much anymore.
Right.
But I still have the attachment from way back when, so I can put something on and still enjoy it.
Yeah.
Even
Well,
if-
and it's funny because when you talk about what was the tune you were talking about before? Not hooked on a feeling. What was the other?
Nice to be with you.
Nice to be with you.
Yeah.
I'll hear that if I hear that somewhere in the store. I get a crazy sense memory of songs like that.
Yeah.
Brandy and whatever was on the radio because the radio meant so much and you heard those tunes all the time. And I just get this feeling like, oh, that's nice. Nice to hear that one.
Well,
You know?
what I remember is school bus rides. Because school bus rides was where you heard, like, 1910 Fruit Gum Company, Edison Lighthouse.
Yes.
I mean, all that real poppy stuff, which I have a real soft spot for.
Oh, I love Fruit Gum Company.
Yeah, I'm all over that stuff.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people go, well, that's not very cool. And I'm like, well, I guess neither am I.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so then in high school, I go to visit my uncle in New York City in 1978. He's taking me record shopping, and there's all these records I've heard of, but I can't find because A, I live in Indiana, and B, they're out of print.
Yeah.
So he's taking me around, and I see the Stooges section. They were all out of print at that point. You couldn't find any of them. And I pick out the Raw Power, and I'm like, hey, everyone says this is the one I need.
Yeah.
And he goes, you want Funhouse? And I was like,
Really?
but everyone says that. No, you want Funhouse.
Oh, that's so funny.
And I'm like, but everyone keeps no, you want Funhouse. And so I got that one and the first Damned album.
Yeah.
And I think White Light, White Heat. No, I'm sorry, it was the third one. And then we go home. Oh, and we're wandering around the village, and I find a Sex Pistols single, God Save the Queen.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, I know they have another single out.
Yeah.
But I can't find it anywhere. I know it was Anarchy in the UK on EMI, which they only made them for 2 or 3 days and they were gone.
Right.
So we end up at Bleecker Bob's. I got a little stack of 45s. I got like Talking Heads, Love Goes to Building on Fire, Wayne County.
Yeah, sure.
And so we go to Bleecker Bob's. Now, this is the first time I've ever been out of Indianapolis. It's the first time I've ever been to the big city, and it's the first time I've ever heard a boss berate an employee that badly. I mean, I don't know if do you know about Bleecker Bob?
Sure.
He was a huge butthole.
Absolutely.
And everybody who worked for him hated him. But apparently some people just needed the job bad enough. So I'm standing there, and he's yelling at this guy. I mean, he's like yelling and cussing, and I'm kind of embarrassed. I'm kind of like this. But my uncle goes, and I look up, and there's a copy of Anarchy in the UK on EMI.
Oh, on the shelf?
For $5.
Ooh.
And I'm thinking, $5 for a 45? There's no way in hell I'm going to pay $5 for a 45.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'll get it for you. So he got it for me.
That's great.
We went home, and do you remember Saturday Night Live used to be on 3 weeks out of the month, and then the fourth week they had like a news magazine.
Yeah.
This was for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Well, it just so happened that while I was there, it was the episode about this weird music coming out of England.
Yeah.
And they showed like the Damned and the Sex Pistols and the Clash.
Yeah.
And they figured we couldn't understand what they were saying. So there were lyrics along the bottom with the bouncing ball. And so we're watching this. I mean, and these are only things I've seen pictures of. I haven't heard any of this stuff yet. I haven't had time to play these records. And I'm just watching, going like, do I like this? So I go to bed. I wake up the next morning, and my uncle is sitting on a stool with headphones on, and he's got my records in his hand. And he's just going,
Huh.
and then he goes, you got to hear this shit.
Oh, that's great. You were so lucky to have somebody like that in your life.
A lot of people either have an uncle or a cool older brother,
Yeah,
and I just
yeah.
happen to have the uncle. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if I told you this or not. Do you know? Are you familiar with the band MX80 Sound on
Yeah.
Ralph?
Yeah.
He was her drummer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, as a matter of fact, the first time I ever heard live instruments in my life, I mean the first time, other than an accordion, my uncle said, "Hey, I got to go down to Bloomington to pick some stuff up. You want to go with me?" And I was like, well, "What would I do there?" And he goes,
Yeah.
"Well, there's a used record store. You can blah 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 blah." And I said, "What do you mean used record store? You mean used?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "You know, they're like $1 or $2 a piece. You can trade some in for
Yeah.
something else." I'm like, what?" And so I go and I grab a bunch of records. I'm like, "Oh well, you know, I'll get these later. I want some newer ones."
Yeah.
So he drops me off at this used record store, and I'm thinking I'm gonna get like, you know, 1 or 2 or something.
Yeah.
I had this like a stack this big.
Oh, yeah.
I got like the First Kiss album, Blue Oyster Cult, On
Yeah,
Your Feet or On Your
sure,
Knees, all this
sure,
stuff,
yeah.
you know. He says, "Hey, I got to stop by my old band's house to pick something up." I was like, "Okay." So we go over to MX80's house where they're practicing, because my uncle had quit by then because he moved to New York to be a painter. So I sit down on the couch, and they're loud. I mean, they're like
Yeah.
stultifyingly loud.
Yeah.
And I'm like 13, 14, whatever
Yeah.
it is. And I look down, and there's a copy of Hollywood Babylon on the coffee table. So I'm sitting here reading this book, listening to this loud-ass music,
Oh.
and by the time the night was over, I was a different person.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
You
not
were
going.
corrupted.
I'm like, Fatty Arbuckle did what? Huh? Does that have anything to do with what my mom said? So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have like certain spots or certain nights where they can point to it and go, "I was different after that."
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't unluckily I did not have anyone older to tune me into these things, but I think that's where those record clerks
Fill
came
in.
into.
Yeah.
I remember after I graduated high school, 1978, I went to Denver University, and I went for the summer, so I went right away to DU.
Right.
And there, in Midtown, there was this great legendary record store, Wax Trax.
Many times.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would go, and I was buying the 45s and bought the Rock Lobster record that
Sure.
they put out themselves.
Yeah.
And the Pretenders and all and the different stuff. And but I remember buying stuff one time, and the guy at the clerk said, "Oh, you think this stuff's crazy? You got to hear this." And he pulled out, and I still have it up on the thing, the import Chess Rockabillies, which was got to be one of the first rockabilly compilations.
Right.
And odd that it was of Chess sides.
Right.
Because there was, there were quite a few records in there, but you don't think Chess is a rockabilly label.
Yeah, I
obviously.
don't know.
And it got like Lookout Mabel by G.L. Crockett, who was black, but it's a rocker. It's
Right.
crazy. I took that home, and I was changed after that. That's when even though I'd come across old time jazz and
Right.
all that kind of stuff, when I heard the rockabilly, it's funny how you go back through these doorways, you rock and roll, and then you rock and roll, current rock and roll, then 50s Elvis and whatnot, then rockabilly, the little indies, all those hundreds and
Right.
hundreds of indie records, and it all makes sense. Like it's not too. And then from there, and this led me right down to Western swing, because you think about. I thought about the rockabillies, and I thought like, what do they listen to?
Yeah, where'd they come from?
Yeah, and that's okay then. And I think, what does Bob Wills listen to? Oh, that's Emmett Miller.
Yeah.
That's so it leads you all the way down the rosy
Oh, yeah.
path, man.
So same thing with me. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd find a record, and then I go, I think that guy might have been in another band
Mm-hmm.
before this, and and then you trace back,
Yep.
or sometimes you read an article in your favorite band. The guy would go, "Well, I've been reading Philip K. Dick," and I'm like, "What's that?
What's
I should
that?
go buy
Yeah.
one."
Yeah.
The thing is, if you keep your eyes and ears open, and the other thing that I love about music is, I don't care how old it is, if you haven't heard it, it's new to you.
Absolutely.
So I mean, there's there's tons of new music out there to hear. It may not be new,
You'll
but
never
it's new
hear
to
it
you.
all. You'll
Oh,
never hear it all.
I gave that up a long time ago.
Yeah,
I told him my favorite band is still out there.
Yeah.
I haven't heard them. I'm looking for them, and there's others
Yep.
that I think are my favorite.
Yeah.
But I'll bet that band that I love more than anyone else is probably still out
Still
there
there.
somewhere.
Oh, I know.
And maybe they'll break up by the time I find them, or maybe I'll never find them.
There's no getting to the end of, even within a genre.
Mm-hmm.
Country records, I went through a long stretch of listening to nothing but country.
Right.
And in fact, that's how about the time I was doing that is when the new traditionalists started coming out, of Randy Travis and
Right.
John Anderson and those guys. I thought, those guys are good, and I would listen to their records. But then I'd hear, at one point it finally occurred to me, like, why should I be worrying about listening to Randy Travis when I have all this Lefty Frizzell I haven't listened to? So then I just put all that aside and just kept going, dip down that. And you'll never get it. You'll never get all the Rockabilly records, even though there's, I'm sure, literally thousands of compilations now.
And Bear Family's trying to help.
And Bear Family's trying to help, and they do it better than anybody else.
Yeah.
But it's funny how it's all about exactly what you say. It's all about keeping your eyes and ears open. And that's what was fun as a kid, was to, not all my friends weren't like, most of my friends weren't like that. I don't know, they were just happy to do what they play, baseball or whatever. I didn't play sports. But boy, there's just like an endless amount of entertainment.
Yeah, it's all
value,
and,
right?
and it's the same with movies too.
Same with
Yeah,
movies.
I love watching old movies, and like I say, they're new to me if I haven't seen them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, that's not really exactly a finite resource. There's comic books. It was the same thing. Then I got interested in 40s comics.
I can't even start that,
Yeah.
because I mean that's a rabbit hole that's way too deep. I just can't do it.
I know. At some point you just have to. But music always rewards you for finding it.
Right.
Right.
And you know, can you name anything that makes you feel that good, that quickly? I
No.
mean, sometimes you put something on, you hear that first chord, and you're like,
Oh yeah. Were you
You
talking
know?
about She'll Tell Me?
uh-huh.
The intro really got me. It's like that's all I need to hear of that song.
It comes out of the speaker and punches you in the nose.
Really?
I mean, and when I was a kid, man, those were just.
Well, and then no matter how many times you hear it, it does that.
I still love them.
Yeah.
I can listen to them
Yeah.
today, and they'll be just as fresh.
Yeah.
So.
Or Magic Carpet Ride, when that riff comes in and that groove,
Right.
I've never, in 40 years, I've never gotten tired of hearing that.
As we were leaving Shell's house, I actually thanked him. I said, dude, you were responsible for a large amount of joy that I had as a child. And he said, people tell me that all the time, and I always get embarrassed. And then he kind of looked down. So he was quite humble about the fact that he'd been responsible for some of the best records ever made.
I can't imagine what it must be to feel that way, like to get up in the morning and think, yeah, here's my body of work.
Yeah.
And
When the sun swallows the earth, the day before that happens, somebody will be listening to those songs.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. It's got to be a weird feeling.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna jump forward now. So you're in high school. You started being in bands, right?
Yes,
And
in
I
high
assume
school.
this is like your general garage cover band
Yes.
thing that you would do as a teenager, right?
The first tune I learned to play on electric guitar.
Uh-huh.
I started on acoustic with the, leaving on a jet plane and whatnot.
Sure.
But the first song I learned on electric guitar, there were two songs. And I had a great the one teacher I got, I kind of wish at some point I'd learned theory and all that, but I never did. But I had a guy who was hip, and he would just say, what song do you want to learn? Or let me show you a song I think's cool. I think you like this. It was two songs. It was Driving Sister by Mott the Hoople. Great.
I
Really
saw them a
super
couple
great.
years ago. They
Did
were
you?
really good.
I bet.
One of the reunion shows. Yeah.
So
it was
good.
So fun.
And Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, Rick Derringer.
From Indiana.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Of course, later on I would find out like Indiana, Jeanette Records, Bix. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
The jazz pedigree there is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he would teach me these things on electric guitar, so playing with the guys, along with Smoke on the Water and
Sure.
whatever. So so then that's when it started in high school, and then I kept going, and went to DU for a year.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't play in any bands, but I saw a really great band there called Johnny 3. They used to play that. There was a bar used to be next to Wax Trax called Malfunction Junction. And there was a trio there, and I don't know how I happened to see them. I like their flyers, cut and paste flyers,
Right. I remember
They
the
played,
day, yeah.
but it's the first time I ever heard a band play Link Ray live. They played Jack the Ripper.
Ooh.
They played their own tunes.
Mhm.
The guitar player was really good, and I approached him afterwards and I said, I'd love to put up flyers for you guys up at Denver University DU. He said, oh yeah, sure, and you can get in the shows if you'll do that. We'll let you in.
Right.
And later on, years later, I figured that guy is Kenny Vaughn, who went to Nashville
Really?
and became like Marty Stewart's guy, and
We
the premier
saw
guitar
him a
player.
couple years ago.
Did you?
Yeah, we went to the psychedelic hoedown, psychedelic square dance.
Jamboree, I think it was.
Psychedelic Jamboree, yeah, with like several, Roger McGuinn, Chris Hellman,
Oh, uh-huh.
Marty Stewart, Marty Stewart's wife, whose name I'm forgetting.
Connie Smith.
That's right, Connie
Yes.
Smith. They were all there. Like a good 2-hour show.
It was awesome.
Sounded like perfect.
Kenny Vaughn is, but when I finally put that together, like, wait, no, that's the same guy. And it's the best example I know of a guy who, like, talk about local boy makes good.
Sure.
So that was that. But then after a year in DU, I went to Lawrence, Kansas to be go to KU.
Right.
DU didn't turn out to be they didn't have radio, TV, film like they kind of promised. That never developed. So I went back to KU, which had it, and started playing in bands there, drums and guitar, and started seeing a lot of people. And I was eventually in this power pop band called the Regular Guys,
Okay.
who got picked as one of the best EPs of the year in Trouser Press.
Ooh.
How about that?
Did you ever run into the embarrassment in your travels?
Oh,
I assume
absolutely.
They used to play Indianapolis all the time.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, because there were certain bands that like lived, say, within a 4 or 5 state area,
Yeah.
and you would see the Replacements played in Indianapolis like 6 times a year.
Oh,
for
yeah,
a
I bet.
while, yeah. They were playing
Oh, yeah.
clothing stores,
Yeah.
little taco restaurants,
Yeah.
gay bars, wherever they just show
Yeah.
up. Yeah,
Oh, I knew Brent and John and all those guys because we were all playing at the same time.
right. Now was Chuck Mead down there around the
Oh
same
yeah,
time?
Chuck
Okay.
Mead was, he's a local boy there. He
Right.
grew up in Lawrence, so we would see him all the time. He was in bands. It was a great scene. At the time, Lawrence, for a period of time, kind of had a scene pretty similar to, we used to say it was like Athens,
Right.
because there was a lot of local bands that got local press. I also played drums in this band called Thumbs, which got reviewed in Rolling Stone,
Uh-huh.
their first album. They never really broke out of Lawrence, but this scene was happening, and then through Lawrence Opera House, then for some reason Kansas City, I don't know, the booking in Kansas City bands weren't going there. So I guess the opportunities were there. They would all go to Lawrence. So the Police, the Cramps, English Beat, everybody came through Lawrence.
Well, I was in Indianapolis and I knew about Lawrence, so it had a
Oh, that's
reputation.
funny. That's
it had a
interesting.
reputation.
Interesting.
Yeah,
No, it was a great time.
probably because William S. Burroughs was there.
Yeah, and he was in town. You'd see him around town, and he was with this guy who was sort of an impresario, and he worked with this other guy, Bill Rich, and they had this fanzine called Talk Talk.
Uh-huh.
It was real good, and they had, and then they started at Fresh Start Records, which started as cassettes, and groups like The Embarrassment. I think that was the
I have
first
that
time they were-
cassette.
You do?
I probably still have it.
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
That's
I
funny.
think at this point I probably put it on a disc.
Yeah.
But
Fresh
yeah.
Sounds from Mid-America.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was great. Lots of gigs to play. I barely made it through college because of that, I gotta say. And, because a lot of late gigs.
Right.
Missed class the next day. But it was a great time. And then it all kind of, as those things go, it just sort of changed. And I finished school finally,
Uh-huh.
and moved to where a friend of mine already lived here. So I moved here in January of '84, and
Now,
didn't play-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, didn't play for a long time.
Now, had you met Deke by this time, or did you
I
meet
had
him
not.
once you were here?
I met him once I was here, and I was what I wound up doing for a day job was a video editor, and
That's what he does.
oh, is that right?
Yes.
I'll be damned.
TV station.
Yeah. Well, I was doing. It was all. Started off doing music videos. I did the first 3, I think, Dwight Yoakam videos,
Oh.
and I did the Los Lobos La Bamba video, and had all these fun things.
Right.
And so that's pretty much what I was doing. I remember being in an edit suite and supervising an online, and I thought I'd call my friend Billy Miller, which I used to do on occasion.
I talked to him for the Cotton Pickin' Smash documentary.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
great, yeah. So I gave him a call during a break, and this kid answered, and I said, "Is Billy there?" And he said, "No, this is Derek." And I said, "Oh, Derek." He said, "Yeah, my band, the Untamed Youth's in town playing, and we're staying with Billy." I said, "Oh, I know you guys. I
Uh-huh.
picked up that LP.
Sure.
Some kind of fun."
Well, we were real big into surf music for a while.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I love that stuff too. And so we got to talking. Oh yeah, I'm from Kansas City, and yeah, oh, I'm from Columbia, and we just hit it off, and then started just corresponding
Right.
mostly. The youth eventually came out here on a tour, so I met him in person, and then he went back, and then he decided he was going to move. The whole band was going to move,
Right.
and then wound up just being the bass player, Mace,
Mm.
and they came, and meanwhile, Deke had said, "Yeah, so I'm bringing my band out. Do you want to? We should start a band like a hillbilly, like harmony band." And I said, "Oh, it'd be fantastic, yes."
Mm-hmm.
And so he came out, and he said, so my whole band didn't come. Would you play drums for the youth? I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So I did that for about 3 years while we were doing Dave and Deke, and just having a great time since then. We had a great time with Dave and Deke, for those relatively few years
Sure.
we were together.
Well, I don't know if you listen to the podcast with Deke or not.
I have not.
But
no.
I told him, this is like 3 years ago, I told him that I thought that Hollywood Barn Dance was the Sergeant Pepper of hillbilly.
I like that.
And I'm
take it.
serious.
I'll
I'm
take
serious.
it.
And here's how I found out about it. I was in a car with the legendary Stardust Cowboys band. It was like Jay Rosen and Joey Myers.
Oh, really?
And, oh yeah,
Joey.
So, and they were all talking about that record. They were going, holy shit! Have you heard that fucking Hollywood Barn Dance? Holy crap! And half the car was drunk anyway.
Yeah.
And Joey being one of them.
Yes.
And Joey goes, "Hey, I know Deke. Watch." He pulls out his phone. It's like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And he pulls out, and then he hands it to me. He goes, "Say hello to Deke." And I'm like, "Hello?" And then he goes, "Okay." And then he goes, "Hey, love your album. See you later." And bye. And I'm like, and so when I got home, and this was right around a period too, like I told you, country music was very foreign to me until my mid-20s.
Uh-huh.
I picked up a Hank Williams cassette and I listened to it on a trip. Because I kept hearing this guy was good.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I put it in, the first song, I'm like going, "Oh yeah, I know that song."
Yeah.
The second song comes on, I'm like, "Yeah, I know that song too." And then by the time it was over, I realized I knew almost this whole album, but I didn't know how.
Yeah.
So it must have been these songs are just like out,
In the air,
floating
man.
around,
In the air,
maybe
that's
the
right.
grocery store one day, maybe a movie the other
Mhm.
day. And I realized I had heard all these songs, and I liked them. I'm like, well, I always liked that song.
Yeah.
So then I asked a friend of mine who was in the country. I gave him a couple of cassettes. I said,
Yeah.
"Hey, what do I need to hear?"
Yeah.
And this was around the time that I used to do record conventions. I used to be one of those guys that sold bootleg videotapes at record conventions.
Yeah.
That's how I kept my record store going. So we were down in Texas for South by Southwest around this time, and all of a sudden, I'm hearing Don Walzer, I heard
Yeah.
Junior Brown,
Yeah.
Butch Hancock, Wayne Hancock, Dale Watson,
Yeah.
kind of the sort of the modern outlaw kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like going, "Shit, this does pretty good."
Yeah.
I kind of like
Yeah.
it. And then from that on, I was just like, I spent $200 on the Bakersfield box a couple days ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I
mean,
can't wait
you
just to
got
read
it.
the book.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
yeah, so it just happened, just kind of like accidentally for me. But then once I caught on, like punk rock,
Yeah.
I was all in.
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely.
And it was great because I had this whole other genre I knew nothing about that I could explore.
right. Right.
So,
That's amazing. That's so funny that you heard that. You heard about that.
oh yeah, I bought
Record
that
from
thing
those
when I
guys.
got home, and I was like, holy! I can still sing Chrome Dome from beginning to end. Okay, when that song comes on, I sing the whole thing.
Oh man.
And I liked the other records too, but that one was the first one I heard.
Yeah.
And I was, and then that's where he got this shirt. We saw you in Chicago,
oh really?
and it was one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Wow.
It really was. I mean, we saw Elvis Costello on the Attractions in 1977.
Yeah.
And they were so tight that I felt like all 4 members were operating off of the same brain that must have been in a box behind the stage or something. Because I had never seen him quite that tight before.
That's amazing.
You guys gave him a run for his money.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We walked out of that show going, "Did you see that shit? Holy crap!" And I talked to you a little bit out front. I just talked to you and Dave. I said, "Hey, I had so much fun. Blah 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 blah." And then I think it was
What was that venue, by the way?
I don't remember. It would have been like Shubas maybe? Or
Shubas I played with my Western Swing Band.
I just remember being
But-
small and it was
It was
in the
small.
basement area.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
It wasn't
was
the
like-
Metro.
No.
No.
I remember it kind of being on like Labor Day or Memorial Day weekend, something like that. But that's the only time we ever played Chicago.
Well, we were there.
Wow.
And we were just freaking. We were going, oh yes, look at that go. And because once I got that record, I was like, Michael, you got to hear this shit, you know. And everybody. See, that's the thing is, some of my friends aren't as big or weren't as big in the country at the time.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. They all liked it. They
Oh,
were like, this is fantastic.
That's so
So,
great.
and then I guess a year or two later, when it was no more,
Yeah.
I was like, oh no. I was really bummed out, and I want to get your take on this. Deke explained a little bit about how it happened, and he said he thought that a lot of people in town were mad at him for it. Give me your take as to how it ended or why it ended. You don't have to name names or be mean if you
Of
want
course,
to.
no,
But you can if
but
you want
I can
to.
if I want to.
Yes.
Well, it's a funny thing because at the time I was really busted up about it because I felt like we were just starting
Right.
to catch a little bit of heat. I had just finished talking to a producer at Prairie Home Companion who had told me, hey, we just wrapped shooting for this season, but we really want to get you guys on next season. Oh my God, that's fantastic. That'd be great. And then Big Sandy now had played Conan.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first time they played Conan, and he came back and he said, and I think Ronnie Dawson had played it shortly after that or before, and he came back and he said, oh, Conan loves Rockabilly. I bet he'd book you guys. And so I'm all excited about this stuff. And then it happened. I mean, I know that Deke wanted to do his own thing. I mean, and I think that's really what it boils down to. And I think we each had different ideas of which way we wanted the band to go.
Right.
And because I just kept wanting to go more and more hillbilly. And I don't know if the band would have been as popular or not. But anyway, he wanted to do his own thing. I get that. But I was busted up at the time. Now I think back on it and I think we had this great time. Then years later we got together for this reunion that's lasted way longer than the band did originally.
Well, I was going to mention that because when I lived here in Los Angeles, I saw 2 of the reunion shows.
Oh, yeah.
And I took people with me. I was like, just go with me. Come on. You got to see this.
Really?
Yeah.
We started those in 2005 and we're still doing them.
Well, I think that's cool because it used to be when a band broke up, that was it.
Yeah.
They're done.
Yeah.
Boom. But it seems that as time goes by, more and more people are thinking, well, we could just get back together and play again. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be an ongoing thing. It can be a thing that you pick and choose when you want to do it. And that seems to be what it's turned into for you guys, right?
The motivator for that really was I would get these calls pretty much once a year from Viva Las Vegas, from Tom Ingram, and from this guy, Mark Mencher, who was doing the Green Bay. Remember the Green Bay Weekenders?
Okay.
Which were actually a week long. Amazing. They did 3 of them, and they were in an Indian casino in Green Bay. And so they were calling and saying, "Would you guys want to get together?" And it took me, I'll say it took me a long time to kind of. My ass was chapped for a while,
Sure.
And it was from 96. I think he quit right before Hollywood Barn Dance came out, I think, and then 2005. So it was all that time. But in the interim, and this is what I'm saying is that now when I look back on it, I wouldn't have missed the opportunity to meet Whit Smith and start playing with him and getting to produce their record and having him play on my Western Swing record. I don't know if you ever heard that, but that was like a dream come true to get to go to Austin. Brought my steel player Jeremy Wakefield. We both went, and we spent a week in Austin with all the great players, Lisa Pankratz and Kevin Smith and Dave Biller and Whit and Lana. We had twin fiddles, we had piano, and that was just an amazing dream to get to do that. So, and then probably wouldn't get to go on and play jazz, 30s jazz with what I'm doing now.
Right, the Hot House Gang?
Yeah, Hot House Gang. And
which I have heard, yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, things happen, and, thankfully it worked out. I remember talking to Sean Mencher, from High Noon.
Right.
after the, it was a few months after the breakup, he called me out here and he said, "So what are you up to?" I said, "Nothing, man. There's really nobody that wants to play the kind of stuff I want to play." He said, "Oh, you know who you had to meet? He just moved to San Diego. He's this guy, Whit Smith. He's an amazing guitar player, and he had this band in New York called the Western Caravan." And he said, "I'll give you his number. Give him a call." So I gave him a call. I drove down there. We just sat down on the porch and started playing Miss Molly and just all these great Wells tunes right away. And he's an amazing picker. So that got me out of my funk,
Right.
which was had been ongoing.
Sure.
And then it's just been fun ever since, man. I've gotten to play with different people. But the Bone Break Syncopators, I don't know if you heard about them. It's the band with, I'll give you a CD before you leave.
Okay.
A band with DJ Bone Break playing Vibes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he plays Vibes. And
I like Vibes.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
too. I love Vibes.
Yeah.
And Jeremy Wakefield on steel. So it was like a jazz band, but it was Vibes and steel.
That sounds great.
And TK Smith from Big Sandy's band at one time, the original guitar player. He was in the band. Wally Hersom, who had been in Big Sandy's band. It was great fun getting to play with DJ. I played drums in that band, which that wasn't intimidating at all. To play the drum, but he was always super complimentary. He's a nice guy, super musician, and he would always really encourage me along those lines. So I got to do that. Hot House Gang. I have another Western swing band now called the Dave Stuckey and the Hoot Owls, and just the Lucky Stars I've been playing in for 13 years, playing drums for them.
So you've no shortage of people to play with.
No, not as it turned out.
Right.
At one time in LA, I didn't know those people. Like I didn't I remember I used to go to these jazz festivals they used to have around here or in Sacramento.
Right.
Trad jazz festivals, and I would see these guys playing from LA, and I'd think, oh, they've totally got that 20s or 30s sound. That's amazing.
Right.
I wish I knew these guys. I finally met them. Just learned that they're working guys like anybody else. You call them for a gig, and they say, "Yeah, I'm free. Yeah, I can do it.
Yeah, I can get off work by 5. I can be there by 6:30.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that turned into a whole great new thing too, because there's a huge pool of those kinds of players here,
Right.
which is unlike any place else.
Yeah.
So it's all good. It's all good. And then we got back together with the band. There wasn't because we both each had our own bands.
Right.
Then we could relax. In Dave and Deke, there didn't have to be any conflict left. Let's just have fun and be goofy.
Right. Well, see, that's what I like the fact, and I'm going to get a little sentimental here. I really like the fact when bands break apart, but they don't hate each other.
Yeah.
I think it's nice when people break up
Yeah.
and go, okay, look, well, this wasn't really working, but I don't hate you.
Yeah.
You're still a good guy,
Yeah.
and I like you.
Yeah.
And also, occasionally, either you or him will post pictures of your kids playing together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh.
No, it turned out very, like I say, it took me a while to get over it.
Right.
Because I felt like I was putting a lot of energy into it. And,
Well,
and things were starting
Deke
to
said
happen.
when it was over, he felt like the whole town hated him.
Yeah.
So,
but once we got back together, and like I say, the sort of pressure was off to like, now this is what I want to do. No, this is what I want to do. Just like, let's just do it and have fun. Well, and for a while we had two bass. The two guys who played bass in our band, we had them both. So we'd have two guys on upright on either side of the stage. It was just a ball. So we've had a great time. I've never had an easier guy to sing harmonies with than Deke.
oh, your harmonies are matched perfectly.
It's
They're
so
really
easy.
great.
It's really easy, and I kind of feel like from the beginning, just one of those things. Like no thought had to really go into it.
Well, at least one I don't remember one, but one of those reunion shows, was there an outhouse on the stage?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I was just trying to remember.
Those are. We've had it. Deke had the idea several years ago. I guess it's probably about. We've probably done 10 of them. To have a show called Hillbilly Fest.
Right.
And, have guests and everybody plays a couple tunes, sort of like a barn dance type
Sure.
deal. And he built an outhouse, and there's a clip on YouTube of it. The blues exists. This place is called Safari Sam's in Hollywood. Let us do it there one year, and and he built a 2-story outhouse.
I don't
How does that
want to be
work?
on the
How does
bottom
that
floor.
work?
I don't want to be on the bottom
But
floor.
the funny thing was, is that and they both had both had open backs.
Right.
So one of us went into the top and one of us went into the bottom one to come out of the show. The band was vamping, and we both came out, and it was. I mean, he's really good at thinking up that stuff. Like really goofy, fun stuff. We used to do. One of the events was because we'd have little contests.
Mm-hmm.
One of the events was bobbing for dentures in cream corn.
Oh God! Oh my God! I wouldn't even be able to watch that. My grandma was babysitting us once, and I had to sing in the school choir.
Uh-huh.
And she said, "What do you want for dinner?" I said, "Cream corn. I love cream corn." And she let me eat a whole can of it. And like about an hour before I was supposed to go and sing, I'm just like,
oh,
everywhere.
Cream corn
The cream corn exorcist. And I didn't make it.
Well, frankly, these contests were not so far from that. And there's a couple I don't want to tell you on the air, but there's a couple of it was pretty hilarious. People would do it. People would actually do it, and we had a whole flat full of cans of corn and dump it all in this galvanized tub we had, and people would enter the contest.
Now, what I want to know is, because I have not been able to catch one yet, but do you have any plans to do any more shows with Doug Kershaw?
Absolutely. We when we formed the band,
right?
And we were talking about trying to think of harmony acts that we liked. Let's do this guy's song. Let's do this one. Mm-hmm. The Kershaw brothers they were probably the second band we talked about. Mm-hmm. Oh, let's do Hey May, right? Could we do that? Yeah, we could do it. So that was the first thing, one of the first things we ever did.
Right.
So then just a few years back, a friend of ours tells us that he's playing at a blues festival in Simi Valley. Great, let's go up and see him. And we went up and saw him. Great. He was really still super great, even though he was at the time I think 79 or 80.
He looks like he still puts out plenty of energy.
He puts out plenty, man.
Yeah.
And so we got to talking, and then Deke showed up, so we were there, and we said, "What do you think? Should we?" Because this was always our dream for Hillbilly Fest, get Doug Kershaw. Mm-hmm. So we thought, I don't even know, how would we even do that? Where would we find him? So he's there, and Dick. We were talking about should we ask him? Yeah, let's just ask him right now. Mm-hmm. Approached his son, was playing drums, Tyler, and said, "Try to how do you explain first of all Viva Las Vegas to anybody that's not in it, right?"
Sure.
So Tyler says, "Yeah, sounds great. Let's talk to Doug about it." Talk to Doug. Doug's fine with it,
Uh-huh.
So we talk about it. I say, "Okay, we're going to set you up with Tom Ingram. We'll contact, see if you guys can make a deal." And so I had to tell him that. So I have to message him before he calls Tom, and I said, "Oh, Doug, here's the thing, because it's kind of a 50s oriented thing. You're going to need to play at least 50% Rusty and Doug material."
Right.
Fine.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
He hadn't done it since 1961.
Really?
When they broke up.
Uh-huh.
I mean, except for Louisiana Man, of course. And
everyone has to do that.
Yeah. So he says, "Sure." And he comes up with the set list, which includes some stuff that we wouldn't have even thought about adding. So we get this list. We're all excited. He makes the deal. And can you swear on your podcast?
Oh, all you want.
All right, let me start in. I'll tell the story that I've told everybody.
Alrighty.
Everybody knows the story, but it's because it's so great. So we're getting together the day of the thing, and we're rehearsing in the room at Viva Las Vegas. And this is the first time we've seen him since that festival. "Hey, how you doing?" We're all kind of nervous, and so we're getting ready to rehearse. I said, "Doug, I just want to say that I learned all of Rusty's parts. If I can sing as little or as much as you want of those tunes."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Okay, yeah, that reminds me of something. Guys, gather around." And so we all kind of gather around, and he says, "Do whatever the fuck you want."
I can see that too.
And we just thought, okay, this is going to be perfect.
Right.
This is going to be perfect. But when we started actually playing with him, or the idea of playing with him, because when I was a kid, apart from learning about rockabilly in college, whatever, Western swing in high school, jazz, Doug Kershaw was always, you remember, he was on TV all the time.
All the time.
Right?
All the time, yes.
And before anyone even knew what Cajun was. But I was like, and I was probably, we're probably 10, 12 years old, whatever.
Right.
And I just thought, this guy's amazing. He looks like he's from another planet. And he's crazy.
Yeah.
He's crazier than anyone you ever see on television, 2 minutes into the song, half the horsehair's flying off the bow. And just as a kid, I just thought it was the most amazing thing ever.
It looked cool.
So to get to play with him, I thought, like, in anticipation of playing, I thought, when he starts Louisiana Man, which is the story of his life, it names his family members and everything in it, and that's the one that got sent up to outer space in the what's the one that set the gold record up in?
The Discovery or
Discovery,
or something, whatever.
I thought, when he starts playing Louisiana Man, I might pass out on stage. Just the idea that he's there.
Right.
He's right there. And it's that guy. And he sounds like him, and he looks like him. I made it. I thought I'm going to burst into tears or pass out or hurl or something. I just thought it was going to be
well, after the cream corn, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
And he's the greatest guy. I will say, when we went to, we've done a few times with him, a handful of times with him. When we went to England for the first time to play with him, England's got that tradition, decades old tradition of DJs, rockabilly DJs, rock and roll DJs. And Hey May was always, that's the main reason we got signed to do Viva Las Vegas.
Right.
Because Tom, who's an old DJ, that meant so much to him. When we played it for that crowd, first time he played it, they went bananas. They knew all the words. Doug was blown away because he had no idea. He wound up playing the tune like 3 times that night.
I always like that when somebody who doesn't understand how much they're loved finally comes face to face with it. I think that's beautiful.
He said it was one of his top 5 gigs he's ever played.
Wow.
And just to see that happening was the love of it. And I have to say, like, most of the old timers that we backed up, Collins Kids, I played with Johnny Powers, Rudy Griselle, all of them, like, a lot of them didn't know what that scene was about until they got there. Ronnie Dawson. Then they got there and they can't believe that it's been going pretty much generationally since the 50s.
Yeah. I'll bet they're probably going, why didn't I know about this?
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't have to work that job I've been working.
Exactly. Exactly. And ones like Ray Campy figured it out early.
Right.
And he was going in the 70s.
Sure. Well, Ronnie Dawson used to come through Indianapolis pretty often.
Oh, yeah.
I saw him several times.
Yeah. That's another guy who was a dear, dear friend. I loved him to death. I think about him all the time.
Yeah.
It's funny. He was an exceptional guy.
Yeah, I never met him, but I saw him a couple of times, and he was always hot. Always.
He taught me, he wasn't even trying, but by osmosis, he taught me, I'm telling all these stories that I tell friends.
That's
a
right.
lot of times when we're talking about, the last time I saw him, he came to L.A. He got hired to do a corporate gig downtown at the Mayan Theater. Neat old theater that's been turned into a dance club. And, whatever. It was a good corporate gigs always pay well. It was him and the Blasters playing some company's party. And so we went down there, we had dinner, and then we went down there. And when we all walked in, it was like a regular party. Like the Blasters were up there playing. No one's really paying attention. They're not listening. I thought, oh, it's going to be terrible. Poor Ronnie. But Ronnie would not be deterred. He never would be deterred. So he comes out and he plays. And really, honest to God, 20 minutes into his set, girls are up on shoulders, guys screaming, because he could do that. Like, he had that sheer force of will.
Yeah.
You could see it.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably saw him in a pre-sold audience.
I saw both times. I saw him in a really little bar in Indianapolis called the Patio. Maybe 300 capacity, maybe 300, and that fucking place was packed and sweaty, and everybody was wearing their duds.
Yeah, sure. Right.
And he had a ball. I mean, you could tell he was having a good time.
He could sell it, and he taught me that thing, like, because I played drums with him up in Santa Barbara before at just from weird wine bar, whatever. And but he taught me that thing of, if it's 10 people or 1,000, you give the same show. Right. You give the same show, and he never would dog it. And he had that thing. It was kind of a unique thing, and I've always remembered that. Like, hey, the people who are here came to see you. Do your thing.
Right.
So sell it.
Yeah.
He could sell it better than anybody. I mean, that thing was those gigs are usually the death, you know. He just really like you will not like me. You know?
And that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And the whole place loved him. Are you
Yeah.
kidding? They were loving it.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
I just saw a clip the other day I'd never seen before. On his birthday, somebody posted a clip from him at the Rodeo Bar in New York, which is kind of a legendary bar. They had a lot of great rockabilly, and it was Ronnie. It was Ronnie and with High Noon backing him, doing that knockdown drag out, and the place is just they're hanging from the ceiling.
Right.
So that's inspirational. I mean, all these people, the Collins kids as well, really inspirational in terms of like doing a show and doing your thing and doing it right and putting your you're here to do it, so do it, you know?
Well, I'm imagining, besides the fact that you get to play all this wonderful music, part of your job and part of the joy of your job has to be meeting people that you've admired for years and years and years, and they turn out to not be assholes.
Right, that's right. We've been lucky that way. I've never had. I know the guys who.
Deke mentioned one fellow. I don't know his name, but he was the half of the Fenderman.
Oh, yeah. I remember hearing about
and
that.
I understand he was just kind of difficult.
Well, all the guys like Shorty and Ashley and Carl Sonny Leyland who've done the house band at Viva, they've got plenty of stories of different people who've come through, and they don't get it. Like they don't get what they're supposed to be doing. And Dave and Deke, I think, we never had. One time, we were playing at the Paradise Lounge in San Francisco, and they would have these things like you'd have one stage going, and they had another room, and you'd alternate sets. When they were on break, you would play. And Sleepy LaBeef was in the other room.
Oh yeah.
And he was, amazing. We were playing in the other room, the smaller room, and we were playing and going through our thing, and we're between songs, and then somebody in the crowd yells, "Hey, Sleepy's here!" Or I saw him out there. I said, "Oh, Sleepy LaBeef, everybody, And somebody says, "Get him up to play." I said, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know if he wants to do that." He said, "I'll play bass." and we said, "Come on up," And he got up on there, and I said, "You know Cherokee Boogie?" Does he know Cherokee Boogie?
Yeah.
Of course he knows. Yeah, man. What key?
Hey,
all right.
Paulina.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, we just heard her on the way here.
Oh yeah.
It popped up on my iTunes while on our way here.
Well, so we're playing that thing, and he's holding this bass, and it looks like a viola in his hands, and him hollering out, "Hey ho, Lena!"
Right.
And I've never seen a picture of that. I've never seen a clip. I'd give anything. So all the guys we've experienced have been, I played rhythm guitar for Big Sandy's band when we backed up Johnny Powers, who was the first guy to come to town of the Old Timers. Another super nice guy. So we've always been lucky that as a band with the people we get to play with, and that's, you're right, that's a huge part of the fun of that band.
Well, that's the fun part of this for me, because I'll pick someone who I've been interested in, or I need to know something, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I, to a man, everyone's been really nice.
Oh,
to
that's
me
great.
so far across the board. Now here's the trick question. You ready?
All right, I'm ready.
Do your kids think you're cool?
You'd have to ask them. I think my my older daughter, who she was what was the name of the guy? There was a guy who was sort of I don't know what you want to call it, one of those guys that he's famous but you're not really sure what for.
Right. There's
TikTok
a lot of those lately.
Whatnot. There's a lot of those
yes.
lately. This guy Logan Paul.
Oh, I knew who that is.
You know who that is?
Yes.
Okay, so we're playing. The Hot House Gang is playing. There used to be these gigs down at the downtown Disney, which is like the shopping area outside Disneyland. There's a big main stage, and we were playing down there one night, and this group of a whole bunch of kids came running by, and one of them had a camera, like young adult type thing. They just ran by, and I said something to them. We're in the middle of a song, and then I get home, and Pearl says, "You were in Logan Paul's vlog," and she shows me a still of him running by, like filming us, and she posted it on TikTok or whatever with a draw my dad with an arrow. I thought, okay, all right,
that's a little bit of
that's
cred.
pretty good.
A little bit of cred.
Now the second thing for her was she went through a big Johnny Depp phase, and she was this is a few years ago, and she was watching Crybaby, and and I was walking through the room. I said, oh yeah, Crybaby. I said, that's not him singing singing. That's not his singing voice." She said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, that's not Johnny Depp singing. It's a guy I know. His name's James Infield."
Mm-hmm.
"You know him?" Yeah, I've been friends with him for years. He's a great guy. "Can I meet him?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe yes, sometime. Okay." He's, I don't know when it would be, but so we're at the. He and I are at the Maripolitans, the one right before the lockdown, I think it was. And I told him about that. It was funny. He said, "Oh," I said, "Oh, that's great." He said, "Give me your phone. Call her right now." So I said, "Okay." And gave him the phone. He said, "Hey, Pearl, this is Jimmy Infeld." She's speechless. And he was very nice about it. So there are those things. And then she's now gotten into X.
Okay, good.
So I showed her a picture that just recently had happened to be at a thing. And I kind of know Exene through DJ. And it's a picture of Exene. And I said, "You know who that is?" He said, "No." I said, "That's the singer of X." "What? Do you know her?" I said, "Yeah, I kind of know her." She said, so it's only by my relations with other stars, I think, that they think I'm cool.
Well, that's what kids are.
I'll take it.
Well, sure, for sure. But you wonder if sometimes, when they're out of the room, they go, "Yeah, my dad listens to a lot of corny stuff." And sometimes he dresses funny.
They'll say that to my face.
Oh,
okay. I'll get that to my face.
Okay, all right. Well, we can cut this down if you want, because we're almost at 2 hours.
Wow.
Which is fine. And also, I have a gift for you on the car.
Oh.
It's not the Elvis chunk.
Okay.
And it's not the doc, which I'll send you in the mail.
Oh, I love it.
But looking around here, I realize I have something in my car that would be better off here than in my house.
Oh my God.
So we'll shut this down.
Yes.
I'll go out to the car, and I think you'll be able to find a spot for it.
I think so too.
So here, let me go.
Beautiful.
Let me get this real quick. Yeah, because I don't want to eat up your whole day, and plus we got to drive to San Francisco.
Oh, you're going to San Francisco.
Well, I'm meeting Daryl Hooper of the Sea. Hey, everybody, thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.
The wrecking yard.